For nearly half a century, the Islamic Republic of Iran has been one of the most destabilizing forces in global geopolitics. Since the revolution of 1979 that toppled the Shah and severed one of America's most critical Middle Eastern alliances, Washington and Tehran have existed in a perpetual state of calculated hostility. A shadow war of sanctions, proxies, assassinations, and nuclear brinkmanship that has shaped the entire architecture of the modern Middle East. Every American president from Carter to Biden grappled with the Iran problem. None solved it. Then came the second term of Donald J. Trump. And what unfolded over the following 14 months would be described by some of the most respected analysts in geopolitical strategy as one of the most calculated pressure campaigns in modern American foreign policy history. When Trump returned to office for a second term, he inherited a historic opportunity. Tehran entered 2025 weaker than at any point since the 1979 revolution. Its economy was suffering under the compounding weight of American sanctions and decades of mismanagement. Its regional proxy network had been severely degraded. The fall of Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad had shattered Iran's land corridor to the Mediterranean, while Israel's sustained campaigns against Hezbollah and Hamas had effectively dismantled two of Tehran's most powerful forward operating instruments of regional terror. Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, was presiding over an empire of influence that was, by every measurable standard, in strategic retreat. Washington, for the first time in decades, held the cards. In February 2025, President Trump signed National Security Presidential Memorandum 2, formally directing his administration to impose what he called maximum pressure on the Iranian regime, demanding an end to its nuclear threat, the curtailment of its ballistic missile program, and the cessation of its support for terrorist organizations across the region. This was not merely a rhetorical declaration. It was a roadmap, and it signaled to the world that the second Trump administration intended to treat the Iran file with a severity that its predecessor never matched. Trump's Iran policy unfolded in three distinct phases. The first, in early 2025, combined renewed economic pressure with exploratory diplomacy. While the maximum pressure campaign was officially reinstated, Trump simultaneously sent a personal letter to Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei in March, proposing direct nuclear talks. It was a move that confounded critics and confused traditional diplomatic analysts. Was this a genuine olive branch or a calculated trap designed to document Iranian bad faith before a more aggressive response? In retrospect, the answer may have been both. 5 rounds of negotiations followed. The first round of high-level meetings was held in Oman on April 12, 2025, led by U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. Both sides described the initial discussions as constructive. A second round took place in Rome on April 19th. A third followed in Muscat. The world watched with cautious optimism. Here were two adversaries, separated by 4 decades of mutual contempt, sitting across from each other in the marble halls of Gulf Arab intermediaries, attempting to sketch the outlines of a deal that could redefine the region. The Omani government, long a quiet back channel between Washington and Tehran, threw its diplomatic prestige behind the effort. But beneath the formal pleasantries, the structural realities were brutally unforgiving. The United States maintained one clear, non-negotiable red line. Special Envoy Witkoff stated it plainly. We have one very, very clear red line, and that is enrichment. We cannot allow even 1% of an enrichment capability. Iran, meanwhile, was enriching uranium to 60%, a level that sits dangerously close to the 90% threshold required for weapons-grade material, and far beyond anything justifiable for civilian energy purposes. The gap between the two positions was not measured in diplomatic nuance. It was measured in centrifuges. During a business roundtable in Doha in May 2025, Trump declared that Iran had sort of agreed to the terms of a deal and would not make nuclear dust. Iranian advisor Ali Shamkhani confirmed to NBC that Iran was ready to sign a deal and was willing to dispose of its stockpiles of highly enriched uranium, accept more intrusive monitoring by the International Atomic Energy Agency, and limit enrichment to low levels in exchange for the lifting of American and international sanctions. For a brief moment in the late spring of 2025, a deal appeared genuinely within reach. The region held its breath. It did not last. Nuclear negotiations between Iran and the United States broke down in June 2025. Shortly after, the International Atomic Energy Agency declared Iran non-compliant for the first time since 2005, following a vote put forward by the United States, Britain, France, and Germany. Then came the strike that changed everything. In June 2025, as the U.S. and Iran were still nominally engaged in nuclear diplomacy, Israel launched an unprecedented series of strikes across Iran, killing scores of senior military officials and nuclear scientists, and devastating Iranian air defenses and other military sites over the course of 12 days. The operation was the most consequential direct military action against Iran in modern history, and it was executed with a precision that suggested years of intelligence preparation. The geopolitical mathematics shifted overnight. Iran's air defense network, its most sophisticated shield against external attack, had been exposed as insufficient. Its top nuclear scientists, the irreplaceable human infrastructure of its weapons program, were dead. Its military leadership had been decapitated, and critically, the snapback sanctions mechanism that allowed the United Nations to easily reimpose sanctions on Iran were invoked in August, setting comprehensive international sanctions to resume in late September 2025. The economic and military walls were closing in simultaneously. This was not improvisation, this was architecture. Trump had appeared to be pursuing a difficult but conventional strategy of coercive diplomacy, a doctrine that rests on a credible, communicated threat to use force if negotiations fail. But what distinguished the Trump approach was the layering of pressure instruments with a patience that defied his public reputation for impulsiveness. Every failed negotiating round, every Iranian refusal, every act of Tehran's intransigence was being methodically documented, building the international and domestic case for the next escalation. The world was watching Iran say no, the world was watching Iran stall, and the world was being prepared for what would follow. On February 20th, 2026, Trump gave Iran a 10-day deadline to reach a deal or face a direct American military attack. The ultimatum was not issued in the abstract language of diplomatic communiques. It was delivered with an explicit military posture to match. A second aircraft carrier group was dispatched to the Gulf. Trump warned that any attack on Iran would go beyond the previous summer's bombings on nuclear facilities. The calculation was stark and unmistakable. The United States was no longer threatening a surgical strike. It was positioning for something far more comprehensive. Negotiations continued through late February 2026 with another inconclusive round in Geneva. Oman's Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi, who had been mediating the talks, met with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance in Washington and publicly stated that peace was within our reach. Iran's Foreign Minister Araghchi declared that a historic agreement was possible. But the fundamental problem remained what it had always been: Iran's insistence on retaining its enrichment capability and America's absolute refusal to permit it. Trump told reporters he was not happy with the way Iran was negotiating, adding plainly, "They cannot have nuclear weapons." On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel began launching coordinated attacks against various targets in Iran. Trump referred to the campaign as major combat operations and called it a massive and ongoing operation to prevent this very wicked, radical dictatorship from threatening America and its core national security interests. He called on the Iranian people to rise up. The message was no longer about a nuclear deal. It was about the survival of the regime itself. In a video address announcing the campaign, Trump framed the operation not merely as a counter-proliferation strike, but as a historic reckoning, decades of deferred accountability finally arriving. After the most recent round of talks in March 2026, Iran indicated that the two sides had reached a general agreement on guiding principles to frame efforts to resolve the nuclear dispute. Whether this represented a genuine capitulation, a tactical pause by Tehran to relieve military pressure, or a sincere move toward a lasting framework, remains the subject of intense debate among intelligence analysts and foreign policy scholars. What is not debatable is the structural reality that Iran now faces. Its nuclear infrastructure has been severely degraded. Its proxy forces have been dismantled or badly weakened. Its economy is under the most crushing sanctions regime in its history. Its air defenses have been exposed. Its most capable scientists and military commanders are dead. And the United States military is positioned across the Gulf with an unmistakable message. The United States and Iran should continue to work to arrive at pragmatic solutions that address international concerns about Iran's residual nuclear capabilities and its stockpile of materials. That is the view of arms control experts urging caution. But it is also the terrain on which the Trump administration now operates from a position of unprecedented leverage. Iran no longer enters negotiations as a country on the cusp of nuclear capability. It enters as a country whose most critical infrastructure has been physically destroyed and which has watched the United States demonstrate through coordinated strikes with Israel that it is prepared to act again. Whether history ultimately judges the Trump-Iran strategy as brilliant or reckless may depend entirely on what comes next. If a durable, verifiable nuclear agreement emerges, one that permanently closes Iran's path to a bomb, it will be remembered as the kind of hardball geopolitical gambit that textbooks are written about, a strategy that used economic strangulation, military force, regional isolation, diplomatic documentation, and raw unpredictability in precise combination to bring a defiant adversary to the table on terms it had refused for decades. If it collapses into protracted war or drives Iran to accelerate its nuclear ambitions in secret, the verdict will be far darker. But for now, in March of 2026, the board looks a particular way. Iran's proxies are broken, its scientists are dead, its centrifuges are damaged, its economy is bleeding, its air defenses are exposed, its supreme leader is negotiating, and the man in the Oval Office is watching, waiting, and, by his own account, not yet satisfied. Whatever one thinks of the methods, the strategic reality is difficult to argue with. 47 years of American frustration with the Islamic Republic may be approaching its most consequential inflection point. The outcome is not yet written, but the pressure, absolute, layered, and relentless, has never been greater. Some call it reckless. Others call it overdue. A growing number of strategic analysts are calling it something else entirely. They are calling it checkmate.